Hey, Jerome. A little more light. Got it.
Hey, Clay.
Hey, Jerome.
How you doing? Good to see you. I was on
I'm
mute.
doing
I'm like,
well.
oh my God. Oh Lord. Oh Lord. I had it on mute. So this is like we got like a few groups around the nation, and this is one of our new ones that we're trying to kick off. I'm going to try to give it like 20 minutes, and then we're going to hand it over to you and get started.
Okay, that sounds
All right.
good.
Okay, perfect. George, how you doing? You want to open up your
Good.
mic, camera,
Good.
say
I'm
hi,
good.
do some
Hi, how are
networking?
you?
Doing
Yeah,
pretty good. Uh, Clay, you want to try like a screen share and make sure you're all good, like technically?
Sure. Yeah, that always is a bit of a challenge. So here we go. We'll give it a try. I have too many things open, so let me
Take your time.
let me close some things up here. Okay, let's try this again. So are you seeing it there? Jerome?
Yes. Yes.
Great. And you're hearing me okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Did you hear about the bill?
I did. It's very exciting.
Nice. What's your perspective? What's your insight? To me, it looked like it's really positive. I didn't read too much into it. I had like a busy day, but what did you get from it?
Well, it looks like they are going to, almost all the provisions that are associated with the IRA thing look like they got eliminated, at least for the time being. I'm always a little bit cautious about, doing a victory dance because all of that is so fluid.
Mhm.
But it definitely looked like that we were able to, when I say we, I guess the self-directed IRA industry, as well as anybody who's kind of on our side, got in front of the legislators that were kind of on the fence and things like that. So I suspect that helped to tip the scale. And that I thought that the amount of reduction from 3.5 to 1.85 or whatever it is trillion, I also that helped us because that's a substantial reduction. So I think that they didn't have to look for money quite as hard as they were going to have to. So, and frankly, for me, my personal IRAs, I'm really excited.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That was scary. I'm surprised it happened the way it happened. I thought we were doomed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was welcome today for sure. I had a discussion with one of my colleagues also that was saying, a very valid point, which is, once it's been on the table once, it's probably, on the table forever to some extent. So I'm kind of hoping that and I don't know, I mean, maybe we'll know this in the aftermath, but I'm kind of hoping that whatever resistance or attention bringing that was done to it was forceful enough that it'll still be on the table, but it'll be way back in the back where they're like, I don't think we want to mess with that kettle of fish again.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, we got some people trickling in. Valor, how you doing, Valor? Valor.
Hey,
How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Pretty good. How do we pronounce your name?
Madhur.
My daughter. Okay. This is one of our first meetings. What we're going to do, George and Mador, is we're going to do about 10 minutes of networking, and then we're going to get into the presentation. So is there anything specific that you're looking for, any deals you're working on, anything like that? Feel free to open up your mic. Any questions you have around anything, uh, do that. You can ask questions too. So you got anything you're working on? Any questions you need answered?
I mean, not specifically at this moment, but definitely I will chime in if there is anything.
Okay,
Otherwise,
you got it.
keep listening, learning.
Okay.
Yeah, and I
How
guess
about
the
you,
same as
George?
Mador. Yeah, I guess the same as Mador here. Nothing really. The topic of the conversation or the presentation really caught my attention because at this point in time, my retirement accounts, they just currently hold like bonds and stocks and bonds. I never
Okay.
even thought that that was it was a option that we could use funds in the in retirement accounts towards investment properties. So yeah, this is super interesting. It's going to be a totally brand new world for me. So thanks.
Yeah, awesome. And Clay is going to tell you all about that. He's the professional. I know some stuff, but Clay is going to get into like the details. So you should be in for a treat.
So Jerome, where are you headquartered? Where are you physically?
I am in the Philadelphia area,
Nice.
and you are in which area are you?
Atlanta.
Okay, so we're on the same time zone. And
Yeah,
I was planning on moving to Atlanta, but I don't know. I haven't made up my mind yet. I'm either going to move to North Carolina or Atlanta.
yeah.
So
I was looking at some statistics today as part of an investment scenario, and they were analyzing Atlanta as a marketplace and talking about the fact that it may move up from the ninth largest city to the seventh, and one of the cities that's going to grow faster than theoretically is Philadelphia. So it was interesting to see that. I was born in Atlanta, and so it was not a big city back then. So it's interesting for me to think that it's going to be the seventh biggest city in the country is remarkable.
wow. Yeah, I traveled to Atlanta like quite a few times. Well, Georgia and Atlanta. And the thing that got me interested is because when I came down there from up here, like the cost of living was just drastically different. It's like
Yeah,
major difference. And then like looking into the houses, I see like the houses are even cheaper. Like you can get like so much house for your money down there compared to up here in Philadelphia. So that's what
right.
got me interested. It makes a lot more sense. I had like I was out with this woman and I got some shrimp and it was like really cheap. I was like, "You sure that's all it costs?" And she was like, "Yes." I'm like, "Oh my God, it's so much more expensive where I live at." So
Yeah,
that's one of those things that got me interested.
yeah, no doubt.
All right, so we got about 5 minutes. I'm going to give 5 minutes, and then I'm going to do a quick rundown of our program. Then I'm going to hand it over to you, and we'll kind of go
Okay,
from there.
sounds good.
All right, Clay, I'm going to get started. I'm going to do an introduction of our company, and then I'm going to read your bio. Then I'm going to hand it off to you. Okay?
Okay, sounds good.
All right, all good. All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to Digital RIA. We are a Real Estate Investors Alliance, and we just started this meeting. So we're going to have this meeting every fourth Thursday of the month. We have 2 holidays coming up in November as well as December. So we're likely not going to have the meetings on those days, but we're going to have this meeting every fourth Thursday. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of our other meetings. So let's get started. Do me a favor for the people that's here. Can you just type yes in the chat? If you can see my screen, you should be able to see like a bright blue screen with a couple of logos on there. So type if you can see that for me. Just need confirmation. Okay, perfect. All right, so typically what we're going to do is we're going to change the time of this, and we're going to open with introduction. So today we started at 7, but in the future we will change it. We will change it over to 6:30, and we'll do networking for the first half hour, and then we'll get into our formal presentation. But these are some networking tips that we suggest on our other meetings. We want you to be concise, be professional. Feel free to interact and share with others in the chat. One of the best ways to get yourself out there is we understand that COVID has changed things, and we don't have to be like actively in person, but still one of the best ways to network and interact with people is to be on camera and show your face. Speak clearly and use the chat box. So if you have an offer or you're looking for something, feel free to use the chat box to interact and communicate with others. And I have another colleague on one of our other meetings, and he say it's not what's most important is what you do after the meeting. So when you're networking and following up with people, make sure you follow up after the meeting. That's the most important part. All right, these are some tips to get the most out of this meeting. First and foremost, this meeting is brought to you by Digital RIA. We are Digital Real Estate Investors Alliance. One thing I want you to do is a lot of times people will ask about the recordings, and sometimes we give out the recordings, sometimes we don't. It really depends. But one of the best ways for you to get the most out of the meeting is to take screenshots. So feel free to take screenshots of any presentations, anything that you see. Sometimes we make the recordings available on our YouTube page, sometimes we don't. That's that. I want you to be engaged, be involve yourself, talk to, interact with the people that's here on the call. We have a Facebook group available for you. I'm going to put that in the chat once I finish the presentation. And just a little bit about me. My name is Jerome Lewis. I specialize in digital marketing. I help real estate professionals eliminate their frustrations around tech and marketing. I got my start in real estate with real estate wholesaling, and now I do virtual wholesaling. So that's my experience and my expertise in the real estate investing space. And I also have a website. If you want to learn more about me, you can visit jeromelewis.com. All right, so these are some of our core values here at Digital RIA. We are all about education. We're about execution. We are about adaptation, collaboration, accountability, and I love technology, so you'll hear me talk a lot about technology and marketing. So these are some of our core values here at Digital RIA. These are some more resources for you. We have a Facebook group for you to mastermind with others, get some free training, some free resources. And I'm going to post links to these groups in the chat. So we have a membership available. We've been working on this for quite some time, and now we finally have it available. We have educational assets and resources for you available. We have slides, worksheets, goal planning, case studies, anything, just about anything you need around real estate investing. We have that all included in our membership. We include study material as well. Digital assets, previous workshops, previous meetings. So remember, some recordings we give away, some we don't. But you can have access to all of the recordings if you become a member. Again, like I said, we got goal sheets, planners, and a lot more included in the membership. If you want to find out more about that membership, there is let me see. You can see my mouse. You should see a blue icon. You can visit this website, join.digitalrealestatestrategy.com, and sign up. It's only $47. Upcoming events and speakers. So remember, we're an alliance, so we have several events going on across the nation, and these are just some of the upcoming events. So Monday, we do this event every first Monday. We have a subgroup. We have a group around notes and alternative investing. We have that every first Monday of the month, and that happens at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Next, we have a passive income group that we have on the first Wednesday of every month, and that happens at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. The multifamily underwriting group we have every single Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And then one of the other groups that we have available is a software skills for agents. And it says software skills for agents, but this is for real estate investors. Anybody around real estate, if you want to learn some specific software skills, you can attend that alliance group. So again, if you want to sign up for the membership, all you got to do is visit this link, join.digitalrealestatestrategy.com, and you can get access to that membership. That being said, enough about me. Tonight, we're going to learn about how to invest with your retirement account. We're going to talk about real estate and some more assets that Clay is going to jump into. So that being said, I'm going to get ready to read Clay's bio, and then I'm going to hand it over to him. So here's Clay's bio. I'm excited to have him here. Clay has been in the self-directed IRA and 401k industries since 2001, both as an educator and investor. He combines his 20 plus years of education and experience and his expertise in self-directed account strategies to educate clients, CPAs, CFPs, and real estate professionals throughout the country on benefits of self-direction. Clay holds the designation of Certified IRA Services Professional and has served on the American Bankers Association IRA Steering Committee. He received his Bachelor of Science degree in Communications from Northwest University. Clay, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Jerome. I appreciate it.
You're
Thank you for
welcome.
the introduction.
You're welcome.
And I'm going to see if I can get my slides going here, because everybody learns a little bit differently, and I'd like to give everybody a chance to see some of the things I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
Okay. So as Jerome mentioned, I've been in the self-directed IRA world for about 10 years, a little bit more than that. And, I've, as both a professional and an educator in the field, as well as a participant, I've really gotten a great sense of how IRAs can be put to work in terms of being a real estate investor. And before I go off the title slide, I'd like to just say that if there's one idea that I get across to everybody today, it's that your IRA, whether it's a traditional or a Roth, and in some cases 401ks and some other account types that we'll talk about, but your tax advantaged accounts can be a real estate investor. And that account will get to keep the tax advantages that are associated with the account type. So most of us grew up thinking that understanding that your IRA money and 401k money got invested in the stock market, stocks and mutual funds and ETFs and things like that. And the reality is you've always been able to have your IRA invest in real estate investments, real estate assets, whether that is an actual physical property or a syndication of some sort, or even debt financing or debt instruments associated with real estate. So the main idea today is that I'm going to talk about how IRAs are able to invest in real estate and combine that with the tax advantages of the account type. And I would like for this to make this knowledge base workable for you. There's a lot of little nuances to it, and it's a lot to handle all in one sitting. So I'm not asking you to commit all this to memory, but if I can get it to where you're understanding the basic dynamics and how you can engage it in your real estate strategy, then I think that's where we're trying to get to today. And all the information I'm going to give you today is for education purposes only. So at Advanta IRA, we do not give tax, legal, or investment advice. We don't advocate any particular investment strategy or investment vendor. And we certainly encourage you to engage your professional or even family teams when you're analyzing any investment for your IRA or for your personal money for that matter. So if you have an attorney, CFP, CPA, real estate professionals, anybody that is an expert in your financial world and investment world, you get to bring those people to bear when you're analyzing a particular investment. And lots of times disclaimers are a little bit of a throwaway, but I do like to talk about this just for a minute, because at Advanta IRA, we are a self-directed IRA provider, right? So we make sure that the account has the appropriate custody and the appropriate bookkeeping to satisfy the IRS so that they will see these real estate assets as part of the account. And so as such, we really are just bookkeepers trying to keep those tax advantages attached to these investments. But what it also indicates is that that part of our business, and that's the totality of it really, means that we don't actually give a lot of advice, right? So you as the account holder are actually the person that brings the motive force and the investment strategies to the IRA. So hence the term self-directed. I know that that gets used in a lot of different ways, and we'll talk about that for a minute, but in a minute. But the idea is that you as the account holder, you're telling us, okay, I would like to have my IRA invest in this property. I would like to buy 123 Main Street. And so we're there to help you arrange the funds and do the bookkeeping so that that property gets to keep the tax advantages of your traditional IRA or your Roth IRA or whatever the account type is. So it does, this disclaimer does talk a little bit about the fact that we're a relatively neutral part of the equation, and we're really here to help you combine the tax benefits with the investment returns. Now, some people kind of, I don't know, we all kind of forget what the deal is that the IRS is offering us with these IRAs and tax advantaged accounts. And so it boils down to basically this: they're going to give us some tax advantages, and in exchange for those tax advantages, we have to do two things. One is you have to have a qualified custodian, and so that's usually a bank or brokerage house, or in our case, Advanta IRA is part of a trust company as the custodian of the account. So, and all of those qualified custodians are, they're regulated by banking authorities and things like that. So they're audited to make sure that they're operating in a way that is beneficial for the account holder, but also so that they are keeping an appropriate track of what's going on with the money. So you have to have a custodian for your IRA. And then the second thing is you do have to follow some rules. There are some rules to IRA investing. And a lot of them have to do with a set of people called disqualified persons. So that's the account holder and some family members usually, as well as any fiduciary to the plan. And so those people have some restrictions in terms of the way that they interact with the IRA's investment strategies. And there's also, of course, contribution rules and distribution rules that are associated with the account types. So at the end of the day, the value proposition for us as investors, and in this case we're all real estate investors, is, hey, we're going to give you some tax advantages that you can use in your real estate investment strategy. You have to have a qualified custodian, and you have to follow a few rules. Now, I mentioned the fact that the term self-directed IRA sometimes gets a little bit misunderstood because it gets used to mean a couple of different things. And I'm going to go, again, drill down to the core here. And the term self-directed is really a marketing term or a descriptive term. It's not an account type. It's not a legal distinction. It is really just a descriptive term that indicates that the account holder will have some sort of choice in terms of the assets or investments that the IRA is making. So at a bank or a brokerage house, they'll say, hey, we'll be the custodian for your IRA, but while your IRA is with us, it can only purchase the things that we sell. And typically speaking, that's publicly traded securities. So mutual funds, stocks, bonds, things like that. No harm, no foul. They built a business model around the rules. A company like Advanta, we actually took the opposite approach, which is, we don't really handle publicly traded securities. What we handle is alternative assets. And so when we say self-directed, what we're talking about is we'll be the custodian for your IRA, and we'll do the bookkeeping for it. And while your IRA is with us, you get to choose what assets you want to invest in. And that can range from real estate, precious metals, private equity, private lending or debt instruments, cryptocurrency, all kinds of things. And so the interesting part about this whole deal is that the IRS does not say to all IRA custodians, you have to handle everything that is allowed by law. They say to the IRA custodians, you get to choose which assets you want to service. And so for you as the account holder or investor, the match that you're trying to create is having your IRA money at a custodian that handles the investments that you want to be in. And it's very common for somebody to want to be fully diversified and in all kinds of things. So it's very common for somebody to have multiple IRAs operating simultaneously, which you can. And so often there's one, you might have one at a bank or brokerage house. You'll be investing in stocks and bonds and things like that. And you have one with Advanta where you are investing in real estate or private debt or something like that. So understand that your ability to interact with the system and to position your money such that it can invest in real estate is there. A lot of times I think IRAs seem like they're very static and you don't really have a lot of control, but you actually do have some control. And this is one of the ways that you can take that control and put these investments to work for your retirement savings. And so when it comes to benefits of knowing this knowledge base, I'll map it out like this. So the fact that an IRA can invest in real estate means that if you have a real estate deal and you are courting investors or partners or things like that, think about the idea that that person that you're talking to is actually two investors. One of the things that, again, a lot of people don't remember or think about all the time is that an IRA is actually a legal and financial entity, and it is separate from your personal finances. And the reason it's separate from your personal finances is because the tax benefits of the account type are different and in most cases better. So when you're talking to a person who might be an investor or a partner on a deal, realize that you might be talking to two potential investors, their personal money, whatever money that they have available for investments in their personal finances, as well as their IRA money, which may not be earning the way that they want it to. And maybe this investment that you have will turn out to be of benefit for their retirement savings. So when you talk to a person, understand that you might be talking to two potential investors. If you're a real estate professional out there, and I know that there are some of you out there, realize that if an IRA purchases a property, an investment property, then the real estate professionals that are associated with the transaction get their same commission. So I actually often see real estate professionals, brokers, and agents who will inform or kind of do some education around IRA real estate investing. And, some of their existing clientele will say, hey, that sounds great. Let's go look at some investment properties in the area. So it is a way for you to, if you're a real estate professional, to boost your business without having to create new relationships, which is often an attractive thing. And then the last one, and this is the easiest one, the most intuitive one, is for all of our retirement accounts. So the fact that a lot of us have some understanding of how real estate works as an investment, as an asset, means that it can make us more confident about the investments that we have. So for those of you who are out there who are experts at stocks and mutual funds and things like that, that's a great thing. No harm, no foul. Whatever way you can create the most retirement savings is probably the way you should go. But a lot of us don't have a lot of knowledge about stocks and the way that the stock market works and things like that. We'd like some diversification. And so understanding that our IRAs and our 401k money in a lot of cases can be put to use or invested in real estate is something to really consider and mix into your overall financial strategy. So these are really the benefits and the reasons why having a little bit of knowledge about this knowledge base or this opportunity, this tax opportunity, can be valuable to you. And I mentioned the fact that self-directed is a descriptive term, and what that really means is that the account types, so the rules that are associated with them are the same ones that you already know. So it's a Roth IRA or it's a traditional IRA. A lot of people don't know that their health savings account is also an individual custodial account and can be invested in real estate. And remember that we're talking about a health savings account, not a flex spending account. Those are two different account types. But if you are eligible to have a health savings account, an HSA, it can be a real estate investor too. For self-employed people, we often see them adopt a SEP IRA plan or a solo 401k, and we handle those account types as well, and they can invest in real estate. If you have kids that are growing up and you have a Coverdell education savings account, that can invest in alternatives as well. And one of the things that I'll mention too is that I put former employer plans on there because almost far and away, the most common scenario I see is somebody who has a 401k or a 457 or a 403b or a thrift savings plan, defined benefit, defined contribution, some sort of retirement plan at a place where they no longer work, a former employer. Sometimes it's because they're already retired, and sometimes it's just because they've changed jobs. But often that money is sitting and not earning what it could. And anytime that you separate from employment and from a company that has sponsored one of those plans, you actually can roll that money over into a self-directed IRA without tax and without penalty. So again, you do have some control over where that money is and how it gets invested. And since we're talking about real estate and these types of assets, let's drill down in that a little bit. So the things that are available, and again, your IRA's ability to invest in real estate has been around since the 1970s when IRAs were created. This is not a new thing. For a lot of years, it was pretty hard to find a self-directed IRA custodian or provider like Advanta that would handle real estate. That could definitely be something that you encountered, but the rules themselves really haven't changed. So you've always been able to invest in real estate, and it can be commercial or residential, any kind of real estate investment strategy that you like. So fix and flip, fix and hold, buy and hold, land speculation, all those types of things, whether you like condos or hotels or office space or self-storage, all of these types of things. And we've seen a little bit of a surge in agriculture the last couple of years as well. So your IRA can buy, investments in farmland and things like that. It really is, it's remarkable. Almost anything that you know how to make money at outside of your IRA, you can make money at inside your IRA, as long as you take a little time to set it up properly. And you might be saying, Clay, well, why would you do that? And I would say, for the tax benefits. And yes, investing in real estate with your personal funds also has some tax benefits, no question about it. But I will say this: if you've gone to all the effort to put some money into a tax advantaged account, again, a 401k or a Roth IRA or whatever it is, it then becomes your job, so to speak, to get that money to make the most money. Because the way that these accounts really help you is the tax deferred earnings, which means that money can compound faster. Every time that you create an earning, it doesn't get chipped away by taxes before you reinvest. You get to reinvest the whole amount. And so if you look at the compounding charts, you'll see if you keep reinvesting that whole amount, the end result can be radically different and much better in terms of the amount of money that you saved. So here we're talking about strategies again. I diverged, I went off a little tangent there. But there are a lot of ways also to participate in real estate. So you can buy a property outright. You can buy a property using debt. So one of the things that's remarkable is that the IRS will actually let our IRAs borrow money to extend our buying power. Meaning, and I did this in one of my IRAs. I bought a single family rental. I didn't have the full purchase price in my IRA, so I went to a lender and I had him, in this case it was a him, lend me 50% of the purchase price because that's what I needed. And I borrowed 50% of the money, but 100% of the returns on that single family rental came back into my IRA. Now, of course, I had to pay the debt service out of my IRA and things like that. It's not not completely magic, but the ability for you to extend your buying power by having your IRA use debt is available to you. You can invest in syndications. I've certainly done that as well, or originate a loan. And that loan can be secured or unsecured by collateral. Oftentimes we see loans in IRAs that are secured by real estate as collateral, but that's not necessary. It's also something that I've done with some success as well. Trust deeds or tax liens or things like that. Any kind of financial instrument that is associated with real estate is a possible investment as well. I've seen people do options and all kinds of different kinds of techniques in terms of how their IRA money can participate in real estate. And you can, of course, have your IRA invest in an entity like an LLC or a partnership, and then that LLC or partnership goes out and invests in real estate. So, for us, it would look like a private equity investment, but at its core, it's really investing in real estate in some way. So again, there's a myriad of ways that your IRA money can participate in real estate. If you have some expertise, or your financial team or your real estate team has some expertise in a certain investment strategy, this is a way that you can, in a lot of cases, just duplicate the investment strategy that you're using in your personal financial world, but you can attach the tax benefits that are associated with the IRA. And the cool thing from my perspective is that you get to use your own team. Again, we don't really supplant or replace anybody. Our job is to be a very neutral bookkeeper and custodian of the account. So you are bringing to bear on these investment choices that you're making your financial team and your real estate team. And I talked a little bit earlier about the fact that an IRA is a legal and financial entity. So just to button that up a little bit, the IRS, again, they're going to give us these tax benefits for a certain amount of money. And so that's why they put rules around the account types: traditional IRA, Roth IRA, SEP IRA, simple IRA. All of them have some rules about how much money you can contribute, what the tax advantages are, and how you take distribution. And so they want to keep that money separate from our personal finances because it has different tax status. And so make no mistake, your IRA is a different legal entity than you personally. It has its own name, it has its own bank account, and it has its own tax ID number that is separate from your Social Security number. Now, you get to make all the choices. So I often kind of, the analogy that I use is, it's kind of like a remote control investor. You're pulling all the strings and telling it what to do and making the strategy choices, but it does operate kind of at arm's length from you. And the reason that the IRS requires the custodian is because they want the tax event that's associated with the entire investment sequence to be appropriate and to follow the rules. And so that's why they keep this IRA investment a little bit separate from you. But it does operate just like any other investor. It's just, again, it's a little bit off to the side, and a custodian like Advanta is providing the cash position and dispersing the money when you tell us to, and receiving the rental returns, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of how an IRA operates from a cash flow perspective. And I mentioned that it has its own name. You can see there on the middle, or the second bullet point there, the naming convention for IRAs is basically the custodian's name. FBO is for benefit of, the account holder's name, and usually the account number. And again, this name would appear on any legal document that's associated with the IRA's investment strategy. So if it were buying 123 Main Street, the title work and the closing documents would all be in the name of your IRA, not your personal name. And again, as a real estate investor, IRAs are a little bit of a closed financial system. So the IRA pays for the purchase, pays for the maintenance, the insurance, the taxes, but it also receives all the returns from rent or proceeds from sale. So, and all of that is in that tax deferred or tax advantaged umbrella. But again, it's its own legal and financial entity, and you're running it. And I do want to take just a moment to talk about tax advantages, because at its core, all these accounts are really tax tools. They're designed to give you the ability to save more money for retirement by giving you some tax advantages. But the traditional IRA tax advantage is different than the Roth IRA tax advantage, and HSA is totally different because it's both. But understand that traditional IRA, and that includes SEP IRAs and simple IRAs, as well as most 401k plans and other retirement plans, is pre-tax money in, meaning that you get a deduction for whatever money you contribute in a given year. Those years of contributions, once they're in there and they go out and invest, those investment returns or earnings are tax deferred, meaning, again, they can compound faster. And then in the traditional IRA tax format, you get taxed when you take distribution. Whereas a Roth flips that script. So Roth contributions and money that you put into a Roth, either via contribution or from a conversion, is post-tax money. So it's already been taxed. And so, but once it's in there, that money goes out and invests. The returns or the earnings are tax deferred. And then if you take a qualified distribution from a Roth, then the distributions are tax free. So in a traditional, you pay tax on the fruit of the tree, so to speak, whereas in a Roth, you kind of pay tax on the seed before the tree grows and bears the fruit. So different tax strategy, neither one of them is necessarily better than the other. And there are certain circumstances where one might perform better than another, but understanding that you have the ability to have both, or use both, or choose one or the other is really an important thing. And it's a good thing to talk to your tax person about, whether they're a CPA or they're just doing your taxes. But understanding the benefit allows you to use the tool in its best way. And I'll just say really quickly about HSAs without going into too much detail about it, because not everybody is allowed to have one. It's pre-tax money in like a traditional, tax deferred while the money is in the account. And so the earnings are tax deferred. And if you take a qualified distribution, it is actually tax-free on the way out. So it's actually non-taxed money. And the earnings that the HSA creates while once the contributions have been made and those contribution dollars go out and invest, it's as close a thing to free money as you can get. But it is tax-free money. So if you have the ability to have an HSA, definitely look into it, because it does have some powerful tax advantages. And so we talked about the traditional IRA. Anybody who has earned income can make a contribution to a traditional IRA. And again, the idea is that when you're making contributions and you're in your earning prime, the nice thing about a traditional IRA is you get that tax deduction for the contribution. So you might be able to lower your income tax rate in the here and now and get those dollars into the account so that they can compound faster. And then the thought behind a traditional IRA, of course, is that when you finally do take distribution after retirement, your income tax rate is likely going to be lower, or maybe lower, because you're working half time or you're not working at all. So instead of paying the income tax rate where you are now in your earning prime, you're paying tax on that money at the rate that you are when you take the distribution. So often that's a little bit less. Roth IRA, on the other hand, if you can take the tax rate or pay the tax rate at the beginning, it does allow you to have tax-free distributions later. One of the things with real estate that I see often from account holders is they will say, well, gosh, I would really like tax-free income in retirement. And that's a relatively easy thing to set up from a Roth IRA standpoint, in as much as if your Roth IRA buys a rental property, all of those rents come right back into the Roth IRA. And as long as you are taking a qualified distribution, and the simplest couple of rules about that are you have to be over 59 and a half, and the account has to have been open for at least 5 years. But all that rent can come into the Roth IRA, and you can put yourself on a periodic distribution schedule, and you are literally receiving tax-free income from a rental property because it was the Roth that bought it, and it has those tax advantages. So again, thinking about the tax tool as it applies to the investment type and what you want it to accomplish financially is really a way to bolster and to plan for the retirement that you're looking for. When it comes to distribution rules, again, the two tax types are a little different. So when it comes to traditional IRAs, and again, SEP IRAs and simple IRAs and most 401ks, if you take the money out take a distribution before 59 and a half, then there's a 10% penalty, because the IRS always did have in mind that this was going to be money that you took out later. Between 59 and a half and 72, you have carte blanche. You can take out as distribution all of the money, some of the money, or none of it. And so you're in total control there. If you hit 72 and you have money in your traditional IRA, the IRS has let you have that money without taxing it for years or even decades. So they're completely freaking out. They want to get some tax money. And so you have to start taking a fractional piece of the account as a distribution in the first year when you're 72, and then each year thereafter. You can take distributions in cash or in kind. So if your IRA owns a physical piece of real estate or precious metals or any of those kinds of things, you don't necessarily have to liquidate that real estate or that precious metal in order to take distribution. You can actually just distribute it to yourself. And when it comes to real estate, the thing that's interesting about that is that you might have your IRA buy a property now that you might want to retire in later. And there are some rules about this. So you definitely want to contact me for some more detail about this, but your IRA could buy your retirement home now. You can't retire in it until later, but you could distribute it to yourself without ever losing control of it. In other words, the IRA, that entity that is the IRA, bought it. And then when you take an in-kind distribution, all it really is retitling it from the name of your IRA to your personal name. So the ownership only goes from your IRA to you. And you don't have to buy it again, of course, because your IRA already bought it. Now, if it's in a traditional, you do have to pay the tax on the value, but there's some techniques around that to spread that tax burden out as well. So again, understanding the rules in combination with the asset type is a really powerful thing. Now, in contrast to the traditional, again, this is just the Roth distribution. So there's also the 59.5 rule for early distributions for a lot of the Roth money. Now, there is some Roth money that you can be distributed before 59.5 without penalty. And those are the initial contributions. And again, for more detail, just contact me. I'm happy to give you the rules, or we can talk about where to find them on the IRS site or however you want to do it. But once 59.5 has passed, there's no required minimum distributions for Roth because the IRS has already gotten the taxes that they are going to get from that investment sequence. So they don't require minimum distributions there. And traditional and Roth, there is a way to move from traditional to Roth. It's called a conversion. So you do have the ability to move from pre-tax money to post-tax money. At the moment, that's very liberal. You can convert as much or as little as you want. But do understand this about contributions versus conversions and getting money into a Roth format. All account types have contribution limits, but there are no limits on conversions right now. So, and the legislation may change at some point, but at the moment, there's no restrictions. So do understand that you can get some money from traditional into Roth if that's part of your overall financial strategy. And are there limits to the amount? Contributions, yes. For conversions, no. Then a conversion is basically taking that pre-tax money and moving it to post-tax. So whatever gross amount that you convert goes from pre-tax money to post-tax money, and that means that you're paying tax on it. And you pay tax at the rate of the year of the conversion. So whatever your income tax rate is when you in the year when you make a conversion, that conversion amount is going to be added to your income, so it'll be taxed at that tax rate. So understand that. But it is a way to pay some of the taxes now and not later. And there are, talking about the comparison between the traditional and the Roth, do understand that there are some times when Roth can sometimes be a better performer when it comes to the tax advantages. And one of them is if you have a very long time. So for young people, Roth is a very powerful tool. But you may have some other kind of uses for moving into a Roth format. And again, talking to your CPA or your tax person about it is great. Talking to me about, the accounts that you have and, what are the considerations that you might think about when you're talking about a Roth conversion. It's a good thing to consider and to keep in mind as you craft your financial strategy. And one of the things that I'll mention is that, I was talking to somebody just today who had called and she had said, gosh, I've been hesitant to call because I feel like this is going to be a really difficult process, and it's actually not. You open up an account. We can do that with an application that takes about 10 or 15 minutes of your time to fill out, and I can have the account open in a business day. Then we'll move some money in there, and you get to choose how much and where it comes from. So old 401k, an IRA at a bank or brokerage house. You can make contributions, but you get some money into that cash position. And then at that point, that cash position is ready to go out and invest. And so you're looking for the real estate investment that you want to make. And once you find it, we'll help you fill out, complete some paperwork to substantiate that your IRA is the investor, and then off you go. And the IRA, again, will disperse the money for the purchase, or close the deal. And then it also receives all the returns. So in a syndication, let's say, you would say, okay, well, we fill out the private placement memorandum, or in some cases it's a tenants in common scenario, but in this case, let's say it's an LLC and it's going to be a private placement. So your IRA, at your direction, we send money out of your IRA's cash position to the syndication. It goes out and it buys the property, and then all the investment returns come right back into the IRA, and they're tax deferred and they're ready to be reinvested again. Right. So you get to keep that money moving and deployed so that it can compound. But the idea is that, you know, from start to finish, you could have your IRA open and ready to fund in as little as 7 days. So don't feel like this has to be some gigantic long-term process. It really is one that if you find out that there's an investment that you can get in and you have some IRA dollars that are available, you know, let's look into getting them in position to do that, because in a lot of cases, again, you can attach the tax benefits, or it may be money that you don't have in your personal finances at the moment, but you want to participate in a deal. So do understand that your IRA can participate in that way. We do have some networking, some live Zoom networking, so please feel free to visit our website and participate in that. I know that Jerome comes to this event every once in a while, and I'm always glad to see him there. So please feel free. It's free. There's no obligation. Happy to interact with other investors and investment providers. And this is my contact information. And I put this up here, for a couple different reasons. But one is I realized that I kind of gave you a broad brush view of accounts and the types of real estate that they can invest in, and a little bit about the mechanics and kind of the cash flow considerations that you might have. But it all went very fast, and there are details to all the things I've talked about. So do feel free to use me as a resource. I'm happy to fill in the gaps and give you the more complete picture and talk about what your particular investment strategies and desires are, and to see if there's a match there for your IRA, and to see if you can put that money to use. And so at this point, I was thinking that we might open it up for Q&A, and I'm happy to talk about any of the things that I talked about in more detail, or to answer specific questions that you might have.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for Clay?
Yes, I have two questions. So first question is, he spoke about converting traditional IRA to Roth IRA. So in that case, how the taxes will be handled? Because Roth, meaning the traditional IRA before taxes, but Roth IRA is after taxes.
Right. So let's just run through a little mini scenario for your traditional IRA, right? So you make a contribution in a given tax year, you get a tax deduction for that contribution. Or in some cases, if it's a 401k, it's just subtracted from your pay. But in any event, you get a tax break when you make that contribution. So that those dollars are now in the traditional IRA. And when the traditional IRA goes out to buy something, we'll just do a really easy math one, because I don't want to get math too crazy. But let's say over the years, you've made contributions to your traditional IRA. And let's say that you go out and you buy a small condo in a little outside of town, and it's $100,000. In this day and age, that might be a little bit Pollyanna, but let's say you buy it for $100,000, and a couple years later, you sell it for $120,000. So that entire $120,000 comes right back into the traditional IRA, along with whatever rent you charged for the renters while they were in there. So all of that money is back in your traditional IRA and can go out and buy the next investment. And all of that operation that is going on inside the traditional IRA, that doesn't affect your personal tax world at all. In fact, if you're not making a contribution or taking a distribution or performing a conversion, traditional to Roth conversion, your IRA can make $1 million or lose $1 million in a given tax year, and it affects your personal taxes zero. Because again, it is operating separately from your personal financial world. So if you make a killing in your traditional IRA, that doesn't increase your personal tax burden for that year, because it's all under the tax protection of the IRA. Now, in that scenario that we were talking about, eventually, when you get to where you want to take distributions, whatever the gross amount of the distribution is that you take, that will be taxed. And if you're after 59.5, there's no 10% penalty, but you will be taxed, and it'll be at the income tax rate at that time. But it's really important to remember that the operation and the growth of that IRA, whether it's a traditional or a Roth, happens separate from your personal tax world. So it does have the ability to grow exponentially without, kind of putting you in a bind from a tax perspective.
Sure, thank you. And another thing, if I have a separate traditional IRA and Roth IRA and HSA, so can all three be connected to a single self-directed IRA account?
Well, they can't be combined into a single account, but what I have seen is that sometimes people will create an LLC or some sort of structure, and have those three accounts be investors in that. Let's just say it's an LLC. It doesn't have to be, but let's say that an LLC is created, and then the three members or owners of that LLC become the traditional IRA, the Roth IRA, and the HSA. Once that money has been combined, because an LLC is a legal entity as well, it can go out as just an LLC, one entity, and it can buy and sell and invest in the way that it wants to. It just needs to split those proceeds between the accounts in the percentage that money was invested in the LLC. You can never make them into one account, but you can combine them into an entity so that they can function from a cash flow perspective as a single entity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure, definitely. Thank you so much.
Sure. Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions for Clay specifically?
I do see one question in the chat there that says, is there an account minimum? And there's not. So, sometimes custodians will have a minimum. We do not. So whatever you want to start with is fine.
All right, I have a question for I guess myself and just younger people, like younger generations, right? We talk about like the retirement account, and it's like, okay, I don't need a retirement account. I'm not going to be old anytime soon. I'm not going to be able to take out my money. What is your perspective on people with that mindset and that kind of thinking?
Well, I never presume to be able to fully put myself in somebody's shoes. So all of us have things that we're dealing with in the here and now, and often that takes precedent over long-term thought. So, but honoring that, I will also say that young people are in such a great position because they have so much time for that money to work. In fact, my niece and nephew, who are in their early 20s, they're tired of hearing me talk about this, but if they can get a certain amount of money into an IRA, particularly a Roth IRA, let's say that they can make contributions over the next 5 years or 10 years or something, they could theoretically then, if they invest that money well, it'll be invested for 30, 40 years. And all of that earning will be tax deferred. And so it'll keep compounding, and it'll compound faster and faster. And if it's in a Roth, when they eventually take distribution, they won't pay any tax on it. And frankly, if they are able to contribute in the here and now for several years and get kind of a critical mass of cash, they could actually stop contributing in their 40s and 50s if they wanted to, because the money's already in there and it's already working, right? So the thing that I will say to young people is that you have such a much better position than I do at my age, because I don't have that much time for the money to work. But if you can sacrifice a little bit to get some money into those tax advantaged accounts, that time is just an incredible ally when it comes to this stuff. And again, you have to pick a good investment. Let's not kid ourselves. Some investments don't work well and some work great. So you got to pick a good investment and be smart about that stuff. But adding time to the element where the IRS is going to let those earnings keep coming back without being taxed and to have that money be redeployed, it's incredibly powerful. So I will say, I understand that, there's lots of stuff going on in all of our lives, in the here and now. But if you can, and you have the ability to put a little bit away and start it earning, start that wheel churning, you might be amazed at how much money you can have with just, some regular contributions here, because it just has so much time to work. So I'll say that.
Okay, we have a question in the chat. What is the max deposit amount per year?
Well, that depends on. So by deposit, I'm thinking that you're saying contribution, which is new money into the account, and each account type has a different annual contribution limit, right? So for traditional and Roth, for any person, and doesn't matter how many of them you have, you get $6,000 to contribute in a year if you're under 50, and $7,000 if you're over 50. An account like a SEP IRA, which has to be an employer account. So usually I'm dealing with people who are self-employed that open up a SEP IRA, but its annual contribution limit in 2021 is 58,000. Right, so markedly different, and that's same and kind of in line with 401ks. Those employer accounts can have much higher annual contribution limits. HSAs, it depends on what kind of insurance you have, whether it's individual insurance or family. But I think that they're somewhere in the neighborhood of $3,500 a year if you have single coverage, and $7,000 if you're in family coverage. I'm missing that by a couple of $100 maybe, but it's in that range. So, but the annual contribution limit is dictated by the rules for the account type. So that's where you'll find that, and the IRS is very good about publicizing what those are, and certainly your tax person will know.
Okay, I have like a couple more questions if anybody else doesn't have any questions. And one of my questions, I'm asking you specifically, I want to know your perspective. Is there, in your experience, do you see like a particular account type that's most popular?
Well, I think that the Roths have gotten more popular recently for a couple of reasons. There's a lot of angst about what's going to happen to income tax rates. And so the Roth, if your money's in a Roth, you don't, as long as you're taking qualified distributions, you don't really have to worry about what's going to happen to overall income tax rates over time, right? So it is possible that everybody's income tax rates would go up, or not quite have the same structure as they do now when you're going to take distribution. So I definitely have seen Roths get some attention because of that, and also because a lot of people don't realize this, but there is legislation that changes these rules periodically, and it's not it's not every year, but it's pretty common. And so the ability for you to convert traditional IRA money to Roth IRA money and not have any restrictions about it is pretty remarkable. It's not that long ago that there were restrictions, and that if you made too much money, then you couldn't do a traditional to Roth conversion or things like that. So the ability for any person to convert any amount at this moment has also generated some interest in Roth. And I'll say one other thing is that the Jobs Act and some other things that have gone on in the last 10 years or so in the democratization, so to speak, of investment. So where a regular financial person like myself can invest in alternatives in a way that we weren't able to before, has really given rise to some people making some really great returns. And so another reason that I think that Roth is becoming popular is because if you're in an investment where you think you're going to hit a home run, having it be in a Roth, that is one of the places where a Roth might outperform a traditional. And I'll give you an example. This is a real life deal. So we had a client who had a Roth. He participated in an LLC, so it was a private equity transaction. His Roth had $93,000 in it, so he was already doing a great job of saving. And that LLC that he became a part owner of went out and did some land speculation. And this was in 2008, 9, like that. And so his Roth bought in for 93 grand, and they went out and bought these big tracts of land. This LLC did. And then 4.5 years later, after we were starting to come out of the real estate kind of recession there, that LLC sold the land, and his $93,000 had become $980,000 or something. It was incredible. And so he will never pay tax on $800 and something thousand because it was in a Roth. So again, matching the tax tool with the investment type is very powerful. So in answer to your question, we've seen more interest in people moving from a traditional to a Roth than we have in I don't know, maybe the past decades, things like that.
Okay. One more question for you from me personally. Do you have a favorite account type?
Well, I'm a tax geek, so the HSA for me is unbelievable because again, it's tax-free money. But not everybody is eligible. You have to have a high deductible health plan. You can't be on Medicare, and you can't be a dependent. So there are some criteria for opening an HSA, but it is remarkable. And I would say, notwithstanding that, and I'm kind of a tax geek, but the thing I like about all these accounts, and the thing that helped me that makes me so excited about it is not so much the account type as that I can take my real estate investment expertise that I know from owning a house or the investments that I've made personally, and take that same strategy and redeploy it or duplicate it within my IRA. So as much as the account types are powerful tax tools, and I like tax avoidance, I think that the really exciting thing is that all these account types can invest in things, something that I understand, something that I know how to kind of manipulate and control. That I like that type of investing.
All right. Can you have multiple accounts, like multiple IRA, like make multiple Roths, multiple IRAs?
You can.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, it's amazing too. So the short answer is yes, and I'm a perfect example of that. I have 2 HSAs. I think I have 3 traditionals. I have 2 Roths, and a 401k. So but let's just talk about having multiple traditionals or multiple Roths. The IRS actually sees all of those multiples as one, right? Because they're both, or as many of them as you have, they're all at a custodian. And custodians are part of the trust system in the United States. And so again, because they are audited by the banking authority and they are obligated to operate in a certain way and document activity in a certain way, the IRS basically sees all that as the same. The reason that the reason that we talked about in terms of why you would want to have more than one is because the custodian gets to decide, or does decide, which asset types or investment types they service, right? So again, the most common one is for somebody to have an an IRA at a Schwab or a Fidelity or something like that, and also have one at Advanta. And you can do custodian to custodian transfers back and forth between those 2 accounts without tax and without penalty. And you can do as many of them as you want. And so people will often, be operating in real estate in their account in Advanta, and also operating in the stock market at Schwab or Fidelity or wherever they are, their bank. And the IRS just basically sees it all as one kind of pot of money, even though they are deployed at 2 different custodians. And sometimes that money is moving back and forth. The IRS, for lack of a better way to put it, really doesn't care. They know that it's all still being documented because it's under the control of the custodians.
Thank you. I see one more, not really a question, but a statement in the chat. I'm going to bring that up, and then I'm going to want you to bring up the Pitch, Promote, and Prosper event so our future members can see that event and they can come to that. The question in the chat or the statement is, I'm curious if you are able to buy crypto in your SD IRA.
Yes, self-directed IRAs are allowed to buy cryptocurrency. So it's the short answer is yes, you can. The longer answer, or the more complete one, is that in some cases it has been a little bit difficult for exchanges and custodians to kind of have a meeting of the minds because of their different requirements for knowing your client, anti-money laundering rules and things like that. So there's really been some interesting interaction between custodians and exchanges, and it hasn't always been terribly good for the consumer. So my IRA has some cryptocurrency in it as well. There's a couple of different ways to do it, and they both ways have good things and bad things. So if you want more information about it, I'm happy to run you through that. But again, the short answer is yes, your IRA is allowed to invest in cryptocurrency.
Yeah. Okay. How would you run us through like getting more information? Is that the one-on-one conversation?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a couple of things. So please feel free to, contact me and, either via email or just call me. That's my direct office number. I'm happy to do that. Our website also does have a lot of information. So if you want to do it in the evenings or, kind of at your leisure and learn a little bit about that stuff, all of the things that I've talked about have some information, and some of them and some topics have a lot of information on our website. So we do consider ourselves to be educators, and we want you to know what the tool is and how it works. So please feel free to do that research. It's absolutely something that we hope that you can read and absorb and use. So
thank you, Clay. Could you talk about the Pitch, Promote, and Prosper event once more, please?
I can. Would you like me to go back to that slide?
Yes, that would be helpful.
Continue. Yes. Okay, so let's go back here. Whoop. There we go. So we as an IRA provider have realized that we come in contact with a lot of investors, right? So all of our clients are investors, and we also come in contact with a lot of investment providers, people who have investments that somebody might want to invest in. And we also get to work with professionals like Jerome and other educators and things like that. So this meeting is kind of a forum for all those people who are interested in, connecting with other resources. And we do it at this moment, we're doing it every other week, Friday, noon Eastern time. It's free. There's no obligation. Everybody gets to come on the event and introduce themselves, put their contact information in the chat, talk about what it is that their goals are, whether it's I'm looking for this type of investment, or I'm offering this type of investment, or I'm an investor and I'm holding a house that I'm trying to sell. Any of those types of things are available. And again, at Advanta, we're not actually advocating any of these things, but you as an investor get to tune in, get connected with these folks, do your own due diligence on it. And we've seen that we've gotten feedback that a lot of deals have gotten done that way. So you're invited. Please join us. Yeah.
Thank you, Clay. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate you coming and doing this for us tonight. Do you have any final words for our audience and our future members?
Well, thank you very much for having me, Jerome. This is kind of my favorite part of the job, because hopefully I'm giving you the resources to think about this tool in whatever kind of financial situation you have going on. So I just encourage you to keep it in the back of your mind. And when you do that, often you'll find an investment or a situation where all of a sudden, bang, the combination of the money that you have in your IRA and a particular investment scenario is going to come together or may come together. So I really appreciate everybody taking some time to listen to it and absorb it. And I just would like to be a resource for you. So please feel free to put me on your team.
Thanks, Clay. I really appreciate you, and we got some other resources, Facebook groups and stuff like that we'll get this video out to. And I always appreciate the Pitch, Promote, and Prosper event. I try to get there every time I can. Thank you so much for doing this for us.
You bet.
All right. Anybody have any final questions before we go? Kathy, go for it. Kathy, you can open up your microphone if you want.
Okay, I think I did now.
There you go.
Okay, yeah, question. I have a traditional IRA. Is that qualified for real estate investments, or it should be Roth? I
Nope.
don't really know the difference. When I log into my account, I see it says IRA, and as the guy who manages it, he said it's traditional. Is it eligible
Yes,
for real estate investments?
Yes, a traditional IRA can invest in real estate, absolutely.
Okay, but it still has to go through the same process that you just described. Some custodian and custodian investors, not me directly.
Correct. Is your traditional at a bank or a brokerage house or someplace like that? Is that where the IRA is?
Brokerage house.
Yeah. So and this is the funny thing, if you call them up and say, hey, can my IRA buy real estate? They're very likely to just say no. And all they really mean is that they don't handle real estate. So what you would have to do is open up an account at a provider like Advanta, and then do a transfer of some of the money or all of it, but most people do partial transfer of some of the money over. And then at that point, it could then be invested in real estate.
Got it. Thank you.
And Clay, what would be like a great next step for Kathy? Pretty sure the answer is to call you, but
Oh yeah, well, that's a good one. But I would visit the website to just kind of get a little bit of a sense of how it works. And what you've already done, the thing that I would have actually recommended, which is take a look at what your existing IRA is, so that you know what it is, and so that you can start thinking about how you want to deploy it. So you actually did the thing that I probably would have encouraged you to do, which is take inventory of what you have, and then see how to use it.
Kathy, does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Anybody, any other final questions before we let Clay go?
Actually, I don't know if, hey, this is George. Clay, great presentation. I really appreciate it. Learned a
Oh, thank you.
lot. I don't know if this is gauche, and if it is, you can just tell me so, and then, I can send you an email. But I do appreciate that you came and that you gave us all this wonderful information, but you didn't really, like promote your company or like, tell us too much about the services that you provide. If we were to go with you, like how do you guys, like, is there a fee that you guys charge, or how does that work?
That's a great question. And yeah, so we do charge for our services, and our revenue model is based on basically our bookkeeping labor. So it's very much like hiring somebody to do your taxes. So for instance, it's $50 to open an account, right? So we know how much work it's going to be for us to open it, so we charge $50 for it. And then we charge transaction fee when you buy or sell an asset, and then we do have an annual fee that kind of covers the ongoing bookkeeping and things like that. But it's basically, anytime that we are shuffling papers, so to speak, it's not really what we do anymore. It's all on computers, of course, but anytime that we're doing that kind of bookkeeping labor, that's what we charge for it. And I would say that most people, in the year that they open the account, they're probably paying us, I don't know, $400 or $500, something like that, if it's just one asset that they're going to invest in. And then often they're paying, $295 or somewhere in that vicinity each year thereafter. It definitely depends on how much activity you have in your account. So I can't guarantee that that's going to be the exact amount, and some amounts are higher, but it's usually something in the hundreds. It's pretty unusual for people to be in the thousands. And we don't take a percentage of the earnings and things like that. So that's why the revenue model is different. So at a bank or brokerage house, often they are either making commissions on what your IRA is buying, or in some cases, if they're providing some advisory services, sometimes they're taking a percentage or things like that. So that's the difference in the revenue model. So ours is more about hey, we're going to perform this service, and this is what we charge for it.
That's great. That's great. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's very, very fair actually. And yeah, great. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Do you invest on our behalf?
No,
Say, for example, and I open an account with you. What happens after? You invest on my behalf or another? How does it work?
no, we are waiting for you to tell us what you want to invest in. Mhm.
And a good way to
Okay.
find partners, Clay.
Yes.
A good way to find partners would be like a suggestion.
Well, I think so. Anywhere
Pitch,
you can
promote, and
network is
prosper. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, so anywhere you can network. So pitch, promote, and prosper is one that is a forum that we have. But real estate investor associations and the groups that Jerome was talking about at the beginning, those are great ways to, one, learn about investments that are possible for your IRA, and two, to get connected with people who can tell you more about them and kind of get you to understand them. But in our model, our business model, it's the account holder that finds the investment and just essentially says, hey, I've found this investment, help me with the paperwork so that we can substantiate that this will be an investment for my IRA.
Kathy, I would I say if you're looking for like investments, you can reach out to me. We do some stuff. I have some partners, right? That's one thing you can do. But another thing I suggest is Clay has up the slide for the Pitch, Promote, and Prosper event that happens every Friday. I would do my best to try to make that event and see what other people are doing on his event that's running, because there are a host of other different other investments there too, like investing. You got Bitcoin. There's a ton of different investments that you can do. So like I'm specifically, like I'm a real estate investor, so all of my stuff is probably going to be real estate. But if you go to the Pitch, Promote, and Prosper, you'll get more of a variety of different investments, and you can have an idea on what you want to do with your investment. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. And it's going to be tomorrow, the Friday, or the Friday after?
Well, it's actually every other Friday, and the next one is November the 5th.
Oh, got it.
Yep.
All right. No more questions? All right. No more questions. Clay, thank you so much. I really appreciate you doing this. I already said it, but I really do. Thank you. Everybody else, all our guests, thank you for coming, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.